This is Akashvani. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on Brics Summit 2023 Significance and Expectations. The participants are Anil Wadhwa, former diplomat, and Nilova Roy Chaudhary, journalist.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji is visiting the Republic of South Africa from 22nd to 24th August to attend the 15th Brics Summit being held in Johannesburg under the South African chairmanship this time. The theme of the Brics Summit this year is Brics and Africa, Partnership for Mutually Accelerated Growth, Sustainable Development, and Inclusive Multilateralism. Importantly, this would also be the first in-person Brics Summit after 3 consecutive years of virtual meetings because of the COVID-19 pandemic. As Prime Minister Modi ji said in his departure statement, Brics has been pursuing a strong cooperation agenda across various sectors, and Brics has become a platform for discussing and deliberating on issues of concern for the entire global South, including development imperatives and reform of the multilateral system. This summit will provide a useful opportunity for Brics to identify future areas of cooperation and review institutional development. Ambassador Anil Wadhwa joins us this evening to take us through why Brics as a whole is important and what is of particular interest in this particular summit. Good evening, Ambassador Wadhwa.
Good evening.
What is special about the Brics grouping itself, and especially this particular summit being held in Johannesburg?
So as we know, the very raison d'etre for Brics coming together in 2009 and later on its expansion with the inclusion of South Africa in 2011 was to have a voice for the emerging countries and also to ensure that the important issues before them in the international system were brought to the fore in every fora. Another related aim at that point in time was to make sure that there was enough funding available to these countries amongst themselves, which could help in their own development agenda without interference or pressure from outside. Those aims seem to have been fulfilled to a certain extent. And Brics has been cooperating on a number of areas. In fact, the agenda for the Brics has increased and progressed as the years have gone by. We are now in the 15th summit of the Brics. And at this point in time, looking back, if one reviews what has been undertaken, there are as many as 868 commitments that the Brics countries have made amongst themselves. Many of them are still to be fulfilled. But at the same time, the issues that they cover have continued to expand. In other words, everything that the Brics countries have aspired for their own development has been taken into account during these summits. And that's why we are at a turning point as far as the Brics is concerned, because here we now have, first of all, the reform of the multilateral system that they have been advocating, the linkages and the areas of concerns to the global South, which they want to propagate, and of course, the technological and digital solutions for SDGs that they have been propounding, which cannot be possible without cooperation from the outside and other countries which matter as well. And that is why the agenda for the Brics Summit this time has a very strong emphasis on Africa and development and the Global South agenda.
Could you specify a few examples that have been taken up amongst this vast agenda you just mentioned? What are some of the specific areas that have actually seen some active collaboration among the 5 member countries?
So the first and foremost is the lending from the Brics Development Bank, the new development bank as it's called, which is actually the so-called Brics Bank, which has benefited a number of members in important areas like energy, transportation, and water, etc., in funding their projects within their countries. Secondly, the Brics coming together has led to much more trading between themselves, which was not the case when they started off. And one can easily see that these economic linkages have increased. Third is the issue of collaboration in counterterrorism cooperation, which seems to have taken off quite well, except for the fact that within the BRICS itself, there are some issues which have developed over the years, especially due to the Chinese linkages with Pakistan, where this counterterrorism has suffered. Fourth issue is the technological solutions to taking the agenda of SDGs forward. And here, the BRICS countries have been cooperating amongst themselves and enhancing their own capabilities in order to make sure that they can cope with the demands of the SDG process. And finally, the exchange of people to people contacts, which has certainly increased between these countries.
Among the issues that has sort of come up this time and has been raised quite a lot is the issue of a kind of a common currency, or at least trading in each other's currencies to be able to boost the intra-BRICS trade. How far have things progressed on that front?
So the idea of having a BRICS currency has been discussed for quite some time, but has made little progress so far. Over the past two meetings, when the Sherpas have met, we've seen Russia put forward a proposal of BRICS currency, which is backed by gold, but it requires a lot of discussions. And de-dollarization is the ultimate goal, but does not seem to be within the reach of BRICS at the moment. What will happen and what is already happening is that the BRICS will discuss how best to trade in their local currencies and also, increase lending within the new development bank. In fact, one of the ideas is to recapitalize the new development bank from $100 billion, which seems to be rather thin for the number of projects that have to be undertaken in the BRICS countries. And also to ensure that more and more of their own currencies are used for trade with each other. You've seen part of that happening, for example, India trading with Russia as far as oil purchases is concerned. It has its own problems which need to be solved. But the issue of having a BRICS currency requires much further discussion and does not seem to be something which is within the reach of the BRICS at the moment.
Right. Now, this is the first time, as we are all aware, that one of the heads of state is not attending this particular summit in person. That is President Putin of Russia. Now, is this going to make a bit of a difference to the overall concept or impact or outcome of the BRICS summit this time? Because part of the charter, if I'm not mistaken, is that all the 5 heads of government or state must attend the actual summit.
Yes, but as you know, these are special circumstances, and a warrant has been issued, as far as President Putin is concerned, for crimes for transferring children from Ukraine into Russia. And since South Africa is part of the International Court of Justice, therefore there's pressure on South Africa to act, although South Africa has already declared an immunity for all those who attend this summit. Nonetheless, I think the Russian side has found a solution by making sure that the presence of Russia is there through the foreign minister, Mr. Lavrov, and that any controversy in this regard is avoided, which has also saved some amount of embarrassment which could have been caused to South Africa had there been a personal presence of President Putin. So I think it's an acceptable solution to both sides, and the other BRICS membership also understands this.
How much do bilateral problems among the 5 member countries, I mean, I'm specifically referring to India's issues along the border with China, for example, how much are they likely to affect the overall atmosphere of a BRICS summit and the outcome per se of that summit? I mean, I'm referring here again to the G20. India has the presidency of the G20, and there have been some issues in which some of the members, like for example, China and Russia, have objected to certain passages on the Ukraine war. So similarly is a problem that has arisen between the 2 member nations of much smaller group, the BRICS. Is that likely to have any difference or any problems in the actual outcome statements?
It does have a fallout. One cannot say that it will not have a fallout, because we've seen over the years, as the BRICS has evolved and as the economies of these countries have moved forward, there have been differences which have come in the way of full scope cooperation between them. The first issue, which I named already, was on the issue of counterterrorism,
Right.
where China has been shielding the terrorists who have been wanted by the United Nations to be blacklisted from Pakistan repeatedly. And that has come in the way of counterterrorism cooperation in this forum as well. Second is the reform of the multilateral system, where countries like India, Brazil, and South Africa have been pushing for a reform of the UN Security Council, whereas China has been opposing India's membership of the UN Security Council. Russia has been muted on it. So there is a sort of a divide amongst these three members versus Russia and China. Third issue has been on the question of the Chinese pet projects of Belt and Road Initiative and now the Global Development Initiative, etc., which does not find a mention in the text because of opposition from India, which obviously cannot accept it given the fact that the BRI also includes the CPEC, which passes through what India considers its own territory.
Right.
These are the three striking issues, of course. But then on the other hand, we've now seen some other issues come to the fore. For example, in terms of a Brics currency, where Russia has been pushing for a Brics currency based on gold in order to de-dollarize as much as possible, which is a far cry at the moment. And secondly, also the issue of expansion of the Brics, where the Chinese have found this to be a convenient tool to produce a counter to the G7, for instance, and to the dominance of the United States and the West.
Right.
However, this is not favored by Brazil in particular. India has an open mind on it, but at the same time is not unduly enthusiastic about outright expansion without criteria. And Russia has been also not very enthusiastic after initially supporting the proposal. So there are various strands within the membership on how to go about expansion of the Brics. Ultimately, the Sherpas have come to a conclusion that will require a step-by-step process and it will be a cautious expansion. Perhaps it will have to be a process in which there are dialogue partners leading up to full membership. And that seems to be the only way out of the current situation. So again, all members do not see eye to eye on how to go about this expansion.
Given all of those constraints, however, the group as a whole clearly coming together as it did after the global economic crisis of 2008, it seems to have given some amount of fruits for it to become attractive for a lot of other countries to want to join it. I mean, countries like Indonesia have been named for a long time, Argentina, more recently Saudi Arabia, and various others have been wanting to join this particular Brics grouping. So what are the attractions that the group as such holds for countries wishing to come in, for example?
Well, there are a number of incentives that others see in joining. Some of these seem to be related to unlocking the benefits of development finance, increased trade, and investment. Secondly, of course, the rise of Africa has brought about a desire on the part of Africa to align itself with the Brics, which is seen as a body of developing countries, and also to move away from the Western-dominated groupings. At the same time, we have the NAM grouping, which has become quite unwieldy, and therefore Brics is seen as a grouping with 41% of global population right now, and 16% of global trade, and 24% of global GDP amongst its current membership, as being an attractive grouping to join. At the same time, there's been a concerted push, as we know, from countries like China and Russia to encourage others to join this grouping in order to present a much more united common front against the Western-dominated G7.
Right. So it's going to be very interesting to watch what happens in this particular summit. Thank you so very much, Ambassador Wadhwa. That was very enlightening. Thank you.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on Brics Summit 2023, Significance and Expectations. The participants were Anil Wadhwa, former diplomat, and Nilova Roy Chaudhary, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of Akashvani. You can listen to it on a mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official.